Hey guys, based on the class we had yesterday on doing page layouts, I thought I'd take a little bit of time and go over some of the, let's say, shortcuts that ScrapPage has built into it that help you do things like photo aligning and matching rotations and such, and just show you some of these little tricks that might make your layouts a little easier to do. So let's start a new project, and we'll go like we usually do here with a color background for an 8x11, which is the Snapfish standard. And let's I'll give it a little bit of a texture here just so we can see it standing off a bit. Just pick a texture like that, it doesn't matter. Now we got this. Now one of the things I want to do then is I'm going to bring in some pictures. So let's add a few pictures here, and here are 4 pictures that I took from a trip we took out to the Southwest National Monument or National Parks out there. One from Grand Canyon, one from this is from Bryce, this is from Arches, and this is actually another one from Arches, but it's Sharon kind of holding up the balanced rock. So we got these 4 pictures. Now let's suppose that all we wanted to do was make a nice layout where we evenly space these things in the quadrants around this this layout. Well, how will we do that? Well, first, a good idea might be to decide what do you want where. So let's say we want her to wind up here. We'll leave Grand Canyon up here. Let's put Arches down here and Bryce over there. So let's say we wanted it to wind up there. Now, how do we do that best? Well, one of the things I don't know if we ever talked about, but under the Tools button, there's something called Guidelines. Now, Guidelines will allow us to show guidelines on the page that are either XY centered or 1/3, that is breaking it up 1/3 horizontally and 1/3 vertically. Don't worry too much about the Pano safe zone right now, or you can turn them off. So let's start off here with just the center. Now you can see that these little green lines come in, and it divides the layout into 4 equal size quadrants. So let's suppose that we wanted to just fill up one of these quadrants with one of these pictures. Well, the ratio of that picture is pretty nice already, actually. So let's say we wanted it to sit like that. Now it's going to leave a little bit of a different size border here than we have up there, but for printing purposes, it's kind of good to have a little bit of a border, because when they print these things, they do what they call a full bleed. And a full bleed, what happens there is the printing process bleeds it out to the very edge, but sometimes it trims off a little bit. So it's a good idea to leave a little bit of a border if you're making a Snapfish book, for instance. So setting it about like that is a pretty good way to do it. Now, suppose I wanted this one to be the same way. Well, the first thing I do then is I just select it and say, hey, up here, you'll see under this match category up here, there's these icons. Now this one will match the width of the previous object. It'll also match it in height if you want to, but it will keep the same ratio for a picture anyway. It will keep the same ratio that the picture has. It's not going to automatically crop it or anything like that. If you want to crop it, you can do that, but for right now, it's just going to go ahead and use the same ratio. So I'm going to tell it to match the width. That is, I'm going to tell the Bryce Canyon picture here to match the width of the Grand Canyon picture. So it does that. Now you can see it bled off the page a little bit, but that's okay. We can bring it back and we'll set it here so that we have the same separation as we had before off of the green line for the other picture. Now, one thing I don't know if you're aware of, but you can move. You can see that this might be like maybe a pixel difference. So let's set it over here a little bit so we can say, well, it's close, but it's not right exactly. Now you can move pictures around on the work page layout with the arrow key. So if I hit the right arrow key while a picture is selected, it's going to move it, just an increment, a very small little increment, but you can see we'll move it that way. Now I could do the same thing and try to align at the top as well, but it's simpler to just select the picture that I wanted to align to, then reselect the picture I want to move and go up here and undo these align buttons. Up here you can see that we have one that's pointing to the left, and that says, hey, that'll align it to the left. We have one that's pointing to the top, and that'll align it to the top. One that's pointing to the right, which would align it to the right of that picture, and one pointing down, which would align it to the bottom. For this one, I'm going to pick the top, and I'm just going to say, hey, I want you to align to the last picture the top of the last picture. And I do that, and now they align. All right. Now we come down here. Let's take this one next. We'll say, okay, you got to fit in there as well. Again, I'll use the arrows to get it up to where I think it's pretty good, top to bottom. I'll select this and tell it, hey, I want it to align to the left. It moved it over just a little bit. And I also want it to be the same width as the picture I had picked. Okay, so there, now it does that. So those align very nicely. Now this one, there's kind of no way I'm going to get that to align, because instead of being a portrait or a landscape orientation, it's a portrait orientation. So what can I do? Well, let's select that picture, the one here from the Grand Canyon, and I'm going to go down here and say, now I want to crop this picture, but I want to crop it using the aspect of the previous object. That is, the previous object was the Grand Canyon picture, and its aspect ratio is different than this one, so I'm going to use that aspect. I'm going to set it here. I'll pull down this until it fits, and I'll say crop. Okay, so now it has the same aspect as that one. It's just not the same size yet, but we can fix that, because remember up here, I can always go and match the width to the previous object. So I'll match its width. Now I also want to match it to the left of that object, so I'll put it over here. And so it matches the left, but I need it to match the top of this one, so I'll select that one, reselect this one, and say match to the top. And there. Now all of these are evenly spaced in a quadrants around the images, or around the layout rather. Now I could have done it with 9 pictures using the rule of 1/3, by the way, just so you see what that would look like. Here's the guidelines. The rule of 1/3 would put these guidelines in place, so each one of these things would be divided up in thirds all the way around, but that would take a lot of pictures to fill that one in. So for purposes of this little quick video, I just wanted to go ahead and show you the thing that you could do here with using the guidelines, match the guidelines here, the center ones, in order to get a nice 4-quadrant layout that's all pictures the same size and evenly spaced. So I hope that went over just how those are done pretty quickly. Now, one of the other things we discussed in class, let me give this one a rotation. I don't know why exactly you would do this, but I'll just give it a rotation just for argumentative purposes, and we'll set it about like that. Now, I can take this rotation, and I remember I made this a little bit smaller to fit here. So, but I can take this rotation and I can go and say, or this picture and its rotation, and I'll go and select this picture. Now what I'll do is I'm going to give it the same rotation. I'm going to give it the same width, which is different than it had been, of course. I'm going to give it the same height as the other one, and I'm going to move it over until it sets about like that. Right? So now we've got it sitting there. How do we do that with all the other ones? Well, the same way. We will just simply go to this one and tell it, hey, give it the same rotation, give it the same width. And now I'm going to move it down to where it might be maybe this tip here and that tip there are the same distance from our line. I'm going to align it so that I align it to the left. And then we'll go to this one and do the same thing. Give it the same rotation, give it the same width. Now in this case, I'm going to say, hey, I want you to align yourself to the left of that one. So it'll do that. And I want you to align yourself to the top of that is, I want this picture to align to the top of this picture. So I'll select this picture, then reselect this one, and tell it to align to the top. And just like that, now we have all these things with the same orientation, or rotation rather. And we have them spaced the same as they were before, evenly spaced, although skewed a bit. I mean, or rotated a bit within the structure of this quadrant layout that we have. So that's a good way to how you can use these buttons to get to where you want. I also mentioned earlier that there is a way to reverse the motion of these things, and that's this little button up here. I could pick this guy and click it a few times and wind up back where it came from. Similarly, if I pick the orientation of this picture here for the Grand Canyon, I could go back over and I could click it and put it back where it came from. And I could just keep doing that with all these if I wanted to. So that little button there does undo the position of any motion that you took, and it doesn't actually restore the picture to its original state. If you wanted to do that, you might recall that this here, I'll just put this back to a rotation of 0, but you might recall that if you wanted to take this back to its original, what you do is you tell it to do that, and when I click that button, it'll now come back into its original picture, which was a portrait orientation, and unlike these others, for instance, here, but it's often convenient to be able to do that. One of the other little tricks I use a lot when I'm doing these pictures, if I want more than one of the same thing, is this duplicate button. You just hit a duplicate, and now you got 2 of them. So those are some of the little tricks of moving things around that I thought you might like to see, and maybe play around with and familiarize yourself with, because once you've done these a little bit, like I have, you get very, very accustomed to doing this size matching and stuff, and orienting and aligning pictures using these buttons, and it's a real time saver rather than trying to meticulously move things with either a mouse or a touchpad or something to make stuff align the way you want. So real quickly, that's a little overview of how this stuff works, and I just wanted to show you guys this, and I'll come up with some more things to show you in another video of how we did that layout in class today later on. Okay, so for now, this is Dave. Goodbye.